Hi guys, I hope the audio is coming fine. Thank you for joining the live stream. And remember, something weird happened yesterday. If you are waiting for the live stream to start and you don't refresh the page, YouTube doesn't usually show you that the live stream started. You usually have to refresh and check if the live stream has actually started or not. YouTube really screws these things up. So Abhay and Kshatriya, thanks for joining. Yes, late jihad ajge hoyeche. Arin, hi. So first we are today going to discuss a paper that I found, very interesting paper from 1982 by a professor of Indology, that infamous field of study where some good works have come about and mostly absolute nonsense has come about. So I don't know if this paper is nonsense or good stuff. I gave a rough viewing of the first 1 or 2 pages. Okay, I saw it has kind of spoken about Pandits in a good light. So it's basically a paper on this concept of Pandits imparting their knowledge to the future generations and what the tradition is like, and the basic gist of the history of this tradition. Basically, it's from 1982. It's from a professor of Indology and Religious Studies, and who was also a dean at the dean of history at the Catholic University of America. Okay, so that doesn't mean he's a Christian pastor. He was just a professor in that university run by Catholics or the Catholic Church. But also that might be a red flag, that it might be absolute horseshit. Who knows? This will be sort of a live reaction to a paper. And he has, I checked out a basic of his bio on Google. So he has written countless books, but mostly on Hinduism, on Upanishads, on Gandhi, Sri Aurobindo, Rabindranath, and this paper on Pandits as well. So he has some interest in Hinduism basically. So let's check out the live stream. Check out the JSTOR paper, and then after that we will do Brahma Puran. Tomar streamer mirror effect ta change karo. Mirror effect, you mean that the guitar should go to this side, right? No, my face looks weird that way. Does it talk about Brahminical patriarchy? If not, then I'm not interested. Pran dada, kar kotha bolcho? His name is William something weird surname. Okay, let me cast the page here. William Chenkner. The Paṇḍit, the embodiment of oral tradition. This is as far as it will zoom. JSTOR is very annoying that way. Okay, let's start then, guys. So the Paṇḍit, the embodiment of oral tradition by William Chenkner from 1982. This study investigates the structure of oral tradition by defining the role of the transmitter in Hinduism, which is the Paṇḍit. Every scriptural tradition has its antecedent oral tradition, but some traditions place such great emphasis upon oral transmission that the scriptural canon itself takes oral form. For instance, the Druids of ancient Gaul never committed their wisdom to writing. The Celtic world, which according to me is the descendant of our Druhu tribes who were kicked out from the area called Bharat Varsha, and they were the worshippers of the Rigvedic goddess Danu. The Druids of ancient Gaul never committed their wisdom to writing. The Celtic world likewise taught by a metrical and rhythmic oral transmission. Okay, seems similar already. Orthodox history, myth, and ritual in classical Shinto were passed on orally by a hereditary priesthood of the imperial court. And as most of you all know, Shintoism is basically Hinduism. Even the word is like that. If we do that usual tradition of replacing the pronunciation of sa or sha with ha, Shinto, Hindu, or it's a variation of that same word. And even the gods and goddesses of Shintoism are basically Hindu gods and goddesses. In fact, the prayers and rituals of Shinto were not set down in writing until the 10th century CE. Can you believe it? So 1000 AD basically. Even though the Japanese immediately placed Buddhist literature into written form. In the history of Judaism, there were 2 Torahs, one written and the other oral. The Hindu wisdom tradition has consistently valued oral transmission more than written transmission. Hindu scripture did not take written form for a millennium or longer after its canon was constituted. There is no reference. Okay, now the paper starts. Ancient Indian education. There is no reference to writing in the whole of Vedic literature because it was transmitted entirely orally. Controversy still exists over the origins of writing in India. An unprecedented script has been found, and an undeciphered script has been found on seals from the ancient civilization of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and writing became common throughout India by 800 BCE. But the Sanskrit alphabet and grammatical principles were not fully in practice in written form until 500 BCE. Writing was reserved for commerce and trading in the beginning, and no prejudice existed against its use except for scriptural literature. Okay, so you see, even there, capitalism was driving innovation. The non-Vedic literary tradition began to develop the art of writing in the early years of the Common Era. Palm leaves were used by 200 CE, so 200 AD. The extant leaves were dated from 600 AD. A vast written literature developed in classical India, encompassing astronomy, grammar, etymology, and even religious topics. But scripture itself was reserved for oral transmission. Let me turn the page, and that's also a slow process on JSTOR. Shaptarshi is saying, chalo kyeu to thik bollo. Even Sanjeev Sanyal speculated that Shinto was upabhrangsha of Hindu, yes. এটা একটু ভুল হয়ে গেছে ওনার দাদা. There is specifically mentions of Lipi by Panini in 4th chapter. I see. Reference Ashtadhyay. I see. Maybe it was not known in 1982. Who knows? This paper is from 1982. It was the... Why doesn't this zoom in further? It was the special role of the Brahman class to teach. By creating a hereditary class of teachers, Indian civilization made vast strides in education because familial wisdom, familial skill set, that ऐसे पढ़ाते हैं, ऐसे पढ़ाओगे तो बच्चे अच्छे समझ पाएंगे. That tradition is being, that wisdom, that wealth of knowledge, pool of knowledge is being transferred from parent to grandparent, from everyone in the lineage for generations and generations. That's one of the side effects of hereditary professions. By creating a hereditary class of teachers, Indian civilization made vast strides in education. The early teachers were usually householders who took no fees for their task. They understood themselves to be fulfilling a religious duty and transmitting a heritage. Settlements of teachers in the country and forests became the foundation of an education system, and assemblies of teachers gathered to ensure the integrity of transmission. It was left to the discretion of the teacher to determine the capacity of each pupil in order to set out a personalized course of study. Beautiful. The primary level of education consisted basically in phonetics and grammar, which impressed upon youth the importance of method, order, and principles expressed in a linguistic system. Although pupils spent much of their time in rote recitation and imitating the intonation, accent, pronunciation of the teacher, they also received instruction in the etymology of the words and interpretation of texts. Oral instruction began with phonetics and meter by simple recitation. Grammar and etymology, also transmitted orally, initiated understanding. Astronomy and ceremonial, completing the primary curriculum, were applied in practical ritual. From this core curriculum, other subjects evolved. Listening to the teacher was the foundation of the oral tradition. Teachers who transmitted the classical Sanskrit heritage were called Paṇḍits. Even in modern India, the Paṇḍit belongs to a class of Brahmins who specialize in Sanskrit learning and whose memory and mastery of texts are proven. In ancient India, there were three principal modes of transmitting knowledge. The first was an oral observational method which concerned itself with the practical knowledge of people, transmitted from one generation to another by word of mouth. This body of learning was uncodified in memory. I like things that are uncodified in memory. Instruction in this knowledge consisted especially in the arts and crafts. The second mode transmitted transcendental knowledge of higher religious wisdom, Paravidya. It was the role of the ascetic and guru to transmit this wisdom, which had as its goal spiritual liberation. The third mode of transmission carried general religious and secular knowledge, Aparavidya, and the Paṇḍit was its transmitter. The textual tradition of the Paṇḍit was both written and oral. The oral tradition he preserved was fully codified, recorded, and textualized in memory. This is nice. Which book is this? RSB, this is a paper from 1982. We are reading this from JSTOR. After this paper is done, we will discuss Brahma Puran. In some ways, nepotism can be beneficial. Yes, definitely. Well, in nepotism, preparation is the last consideration. Its legacy, yes. Still, I'd not want hereditary system as expressed can be passed even by senior teachers to newer teachers. Yes, because there are too many side effects of nepotism as well. RSB, not in this case. The author did not explain, but along with phonetics, accurate pronunciation is the key along with accents. Okay, P.V. Karne, guys, whom we had talked about, who has written that 15 volume. I know it costs 15,000 rupees. I forgot how many volume it is. 8 or 10 volumes of the history of Dharma Shastras. That P.V. Karne. P.V. Karne observes that oral instruction was both the cheapest method of transmission and the one way which assured the greatest accuracy. There is always the possibility of error in writing and copying a manuscript because there was no printing back then. But to make a mistake in memorizing and reciting a sacred text is regarded an offense by a Paṇḍit. When Western scholars first published critical editions, time to turn the page slowly. When Western scholars first published critical editions of Indian literature, they frequently consulted Paṇḍits, whose memories were considered more accurate than existing manuscripts. Hajime Nakamura, reflecting on the role of the Paṇḍit, comments that the written text can at most be used as an aid to memory. So it's secondary. It's the subordinate to memory. Written text is the subordinate to memory in our culture. Text can at most be used as an aid to memory, but it has no authority. The teacher in classical India was neither an independent thinker nor a private researcher, but fundamentally the transmitter of an authoritative tradition. The spoken word carried authority, which the written word lacked. This explains why such emphasis was placed on oral tradition in India. A Paṇḍit descended from a family line of teachers whose particular function was to transmit a legacy. The Paṇḍit's authority was grounded in the lineage of teachers who gave continuity to tradition. And this culture, this way of thinking about teachers has survived in pretty weird places in funny ways. For example, if you go to learn music from a teacher, vocals, guitar, everything, that teacher sells his persona, his brand as the student of some other great teacher. That, hey, I'm teaching guitar, but I learned guitar from this great man. So that's the culture that we have inherited from this culture. The oral law in early Jewish history resembles the oral tradition in India. In The Chosen, Chaim Potok describes the place of oral tradition in the Hasidic understanding of Torah. In this work, oral tradition nurtures the relationship between a rabbi and his son and the transmission of Hasidic wisdom. Oral law was the basis of the Talmudic Torah, which included both oral and written law. Tradition is a term applied to the unwritten code of law given to Moses. Torah could not be understood without oral law, if not only anteceded written law but also determined its meaning. Moreover, the Talmud was understood not as a perfect rendition of oral law in writing, but rather as notes on the oral law. In Rabbinic Judaism, the teaching of the great masters was binding and carried authority. As in ancient India, the authority of the teacher was based upon a tradition that had been orally transmitted. Next subchapter begins, transmission of scripture. Hazam Nakamura. Absolutely, Dada, music is the industry where it still exists, yes. Dada, I'm not getting your video notifications from 2-3 weeks. Shadow band. This is my upper function. In ancient Japan as well as Nordic countries, blacksmiths and swordsmiths have mostly been hereditary. Yeah. The reason why Japan had finest medieval weaponry, same goes for pottery or any such craft. And yes, Japan is famous for having a caste system. Why won't this zoom in a little? Okay, transmission of scripture. The Hindus differentiate religious literature which is revealed from that which is merely revered. Okay, interesting line. The Hindus differentiate religious literature which is revealed from that which is merely revered. Scripture, the revealed literature, is termed Shruti, namely that which has been heard. The revered religious literature is termed smriti, namely that which has been remembered. Scriptural literature, or Shruti, it is believed, does not originate from the wisdom of the sages, but is the eternal wisdom heard by the sages as it resonates throughout time. It has no personal origination. In this particular age, it is heard by ancient Indian seers who codify it in a body of wisdom called the Veda. An ancient text reads, all Vedas are committed to memory by word of mouth. To let the Veda slip from memory is a grave offense comparable to murder or drinking intoxicants. The whole of Veda had to be committed to memory in order to guarantee its transmission. It took from 12 to 24 years to completely master one of the 4 major portions of the Veda. 12 to 24 years, one of the 4 major portions of the Veda. Scriptural education consequently consisted in recitation and repetition. The Rig Veda speaks of that monotonous repetition and compares it to the croaking frogs excited by an approaching rain. Since recitation was regulated by meter and modulation of the voice, the early seers placed value in the sounds of syllables, words, and phrases. Ai Tsing, one of the first Chinese intellectuals to visit India in classical times, wrote, who is this guy, Ai Tsing? Is it Yuan Sing? I've heard different pronunciations of Yuan Sang over the years. Ai Tsing is someone different, I guess. Ai Tsing, one of the first Chinese intellectuals to visit India in classical times, wrote, quote, there are 2 traditional ways in India of attaining to intellectual power. One committing to memory, and the alphabet fixes one's ideas. The hymns of the Rig Veda, the earliest of the 4 sections of the Veda, are now classified according to families of authors. Homogeneity of style and vocabulary characterize each mandala or unit of the Rig Veda, authored by a particular family, like Vishwamitra Putra Madhuchanda. Although no system of a single teacher can be identified, the poets and seers of India's earliest scripture were markedly individualistic. Look at this. Mention of cult deities and ritual prayer peculiarities betray the religious preferences of each family of authors. Okay, mention of cult deities and ritual prayer peculiarities. Okay, so every family was coming up with some distinct deity or distinct prayer peculiarities. Okay, how to pray, that mode of prayer, there were some differences in that as well, that betrayed the religious preferences of each family of authors. Each family wrapped its oral tradition in great secrecy and guarded it as a family inheritance. Fathers transmitted scripture to sons, and frequently young men were sent to more advanced teachers. Some of the Vedic authors were domestic priests, purohitas, and in their families especially, the transmission from generation to generation was established. Although 407 authors of the Rig Veda have been traced, all the collections were brought together by 1100 BCE. Scriptural education by means of the written word was absolutely condemned. Reliance on manuscripts was considered one of the 6 hindrances to learning, along with gambling, dramatic arts, women, lethargy, and sleeping. The Mahabharata condemned to hell anyone who would write the Veda. The Narada Smriti explicitly claimed that it was utterly worthless to learn the Veda from a book. Narada writes, what is learned from reliance on books and is not learned from a teacher does not shine in an assembly. He also condemned to hell those who sell the Veda, those who ridicule it, and those who write it down. Shayanacharya quotes the adage that the text must be learned from the lips of a teacher and not from a manuscript, because scriptural education must be through hearing sacred wisdom. Kumarila Bhatta described the writing of the Veda as sacrilege. One text condemns the person who learns the Veda from a manuscript as the... Wait, internet is back. Okay. कहाँ गया वासु का? The words are so small. Shayanacharya quotes the adage that the text must be learned from the lips of a teacher and not from manuscript, because scriptural education must be through hearing sacred wisdom. Kumarila Bhatta described the writing of the Veda as sacrilege. One text condemns the person who learns the Veda from a manuscript as the worst among learners. To learn the Veda from a manuscript meant not to comprehend it. It is believed that Vasuka, a Kashmiri, first wrote out the Veda in the 8th or 9th century AD, although oral transmission continued as late as the 11th and 12th century AD, when the texts were commonly committed to writing. Even then it was orally going on until 11th, 12th century. The study of the Veda and the teaching of the Veda have been regarded as a religious duty through the ages. Even in the present century, Brahmins who memorize the Veda and other large bodies of Sanskrit literature consider doing so a religious act, and Paṇḍits carry on Brahminic Sanskrit education today. In classical times, oral learning and teaching were compulsory religious duties, not only the Brahman class but all twice-born Hindus, so that V1, V2, V3. Twice-born Hindus shared the obligation to perpetuate the oral transmission of scripture. It was just as meritorious a sacrifice or yajna to transmit the Veda as to perform ritual or meditation. In fact, study of the Veda was essential for the performance of sacrifice, whether sacrifice meant ritual or meditation. What a beautiful thing we have, guys. Even meditation is sort of a sacrifice. In fact, the study of the Veda was essential for the performance of sacrifice, whether the sacrifice meant ritual or meditation. This sacred duty was taken so seriously in classical times that it structured Indian civilization, facilitated the spread of ancient wisdom, and also preserved it intact. It produced both a sense of responsibility and a sense of fulfillment of religious duty. This is so beautifully written. It advanced education in the home as well as a more public system of education. Above all, it produced specialists in religious wisdom. Let me have a sip of coffee and check some comments. This is a nice paper. Yes, that's why we see you see less manuscripts of Veda. True, but that did not create military conflicts. That's only Apara Vidya, so don't worry. But that actually helped commies to create multiple variants of Veda to defame it. So yes, scriptures are very vital. Vedartha is for all, as declares Adi Shankara in his commentary on Taittiriya Upanishad. This is why AIM keeps talking about the lack of effective archiving methods in ancient Bharat. I am going to start a Bengali live stream of Rig Veda any day now. I'm just worried about one thing, that I'm going to get a lot of pronunciations wrong. That's the only thing I'm worried about. And especially in English also, the pronunciations were not that tough. Although in Manusmriti we did have some problem, right? Near the end of the Manusmriti live streams, I stopped pronouncing the Sanskrit words and directly went to the translation, because some words in Sanskrit are about this long, entire page long. So I'll keep stammering in the live stream. It's a hilarious situation, and that's going to be even tougher while reading in Bengali. So I don't know what to do. Okay. A diversified method of study was developed. After the scripture was committed to memory, reflection upon the text and determination of meaning followed. Okay, contemplation. Scripture was often repeated in order to keep it fresh in memory and understanding. It was also used for japa, an inaudible repetition of the text as prayer. Finally, it was imparted to others. But the cornerstone of Vedic learning, as of all classical Indian instruction, was listening to the recitation of the text. The student of scripture must hear the text as the ancient seers heard eternal wisdom. Hearing, Sravana, in the Indian sense, involves two powers: the audial function, which is ephemeral, and a deeper and more subjective hearing, which resonates with the self, Atman. The general Indian conviction is that hearing a proximate cause of insight, a notion similar to that found in Chan Buddhism, Sravana is the term that denotes the activity by which the text is heard, memorized, learned, and controlled. It has 6 components. The topic is discovered at the beginning and end of each passage. The topic is then discussed through repetition and variations on the theme. The originality of the passage is found. The result of the passage is uncovered. the value of the study is indicated, and finally, the argument demonstrating its validity is grasped. Hearing the text, consequently, is not a passive operation, but a rigorous analysis. Now, next subchapter begins, oral tradition and scripture. Okay, exactly why there have been so much manipulations of history. Dada, when can we actually meet? I don't know. Not sure. See, I am the one who says make one standard version of Acharya and critical version. Yeah. Dada, I will suggest reading Rig Veda translations via multiple translations and not mantra, as it's actually not allowed to read mantra unless you have Janyo. That's what I was thinking. And getting the pronunciations wrong is also bad. So what we can do while discussing the Bengali Rig Veda is what we basically did in terms of the Manusmriti live stream as well, that we stopped reading the primary Sanskrit shloka itself. Okay, we'll just discuss the translation and the purport bolte jisko. Okay, that's also there in the Bengali Rig Veda. So first of all, my Bengali Rig Veda has a gigantic introduction. Okay, they have discussed all pros and cons and this side of the argument, that side of the argument, validity of the Veda, what is the Veda, is the Veda the book, is the Veda the mantra, what is the Veda, all those sorts of interesting discussions are there. It's basically a Bengali edition of the Shayanacharya commentary. Okay, and then after many live streams we will probably reach the direct Shuktas, and there then we are going to not read the direct Sanskrit shlokas, and we are going to read the translations themselves. Dada, what's your take on patriarchal society? I don't think there is a patriarchal society. Do you support equal role society or patriarchal society? I think whichever happens spontaneously is the right thing. The government should not be meddling in this. If there's a conversation between two genders that, hey, we demand these rights, and if men do end up giving that up, not because of governmental intervention, not because of capitalism telling them that, yes, see, men are either fucking assholes or just weak pussies, and women are great, women are victimized, at the same time great, women are equal, at the same time better than men. If men accept it, fair enough, but without the manipulation of government and capitalism. Durgadas Lahiri, the best Bengali Pandit, at least one of them. Yes, that's the translation I have. Okay, oral tradition and scripture. Early Indian epistemology considered sense perception, inference is anumana pramana, and testimony to be the basis of knowledge. They're talking about pramana shastra basically, right? Both sense perception is what? Manas pratyaksha pramana, I guess. And inference, anumana pramana, however, were deemed defective because they were liable to personal error and to the imperfection of the external and internal senses, guys. See, they were heading towards what we call science today already. Verbal testimony or Shabda, on the other hand, was believed to be without error because it imparted knowledge through hearing from a higher authority, as in today's law as well. After all, more than evidence, eyewitness account is sarvopari. So, Shabda, okay? Verbal evidence. Hearing or Sravana is to accept wisdom from a higher authority, oral tradition, higher authority or oral tradition. In later Indian epistemology, verbal testimony became one of the 6 means of knowledge, along with perception, inference, comparison, postulation, and intuition, and some schools of philosophy still raised verbal testimony above the other means. There is more to verbal testimony than simply listening to the words of another. Verbal testimony entails the grasp of the meaning of words. It embraces reasoning, confirmation of meaning by another, and application of meaning. Thus, oral transmission of scripture is initiated by an external authority, but it is completed by internal authority when one makes it a part of his own analysis. What a beautiful thing. There is efficacy to the recitation of a text by a teacher and the repetition of it by a pupil, according to Hindu belief. Yeah, it's common sense according to me. The sound of the sacred word has its own power apart from the sense. The dimensions of sound, its rhythm and vibrations, were important in oral transmission. The great respect which word and sound elicit in India may be due to the various interpretations of the Sphota theory. One common understanding of the Sphota theory is that a word or an individual phonemist phoneme is an entire entity other than sound. Okay. One common understanding of the Spota theory is that a word or an individual phoneme is an entity other than sound, and this entity itself bears meaning. The meaning of a word as an entity pre-exists in the individual when one speaks and is heard. An identical meaning is awakened in the hearer. Okay, internet is back again. One common understanding of the Spota theory is that a word or an individual phoneme is an entity other than sound, and this entity itself bears meaning. The meaning of a word as an entity pre-exists in the individual, and when one speaks and is heard, an identical meaning is awakened in the hearer. This is very subtle stuff, guys. Some Vedantins argue that the meaning of words and the meaning of sounds are rooted in the self, Atman. Regardless of the influence of the Spota theory, it is classical belief that Vedic sounds possess eternality, Sanatan. This may explain why exactness is expected in reciting and transmitting a text. It may also explain the efficacy and power attributed to the sound of the text as it is orally transmitted. Even a cursory study of classical Indian philosophy discovers the importance of memory. Memory is more frequently mentioned among the internal faculties than any other intellectual operation. The Paṇḍit represented the living memory of a scriptural tradition, and which is why I was saying that insanely controversial thing to say, that no wonder kids from Brahmin families even today have a certain degree of extra academic rigor and are good at academics especially than other varnas. What are you going to do? It's their thousands of years of family heritage to learn and keep memorize scriptures and things written in front of them. Internal faculties and any other intellectual operation. Okay, memory is more frequently mentioned among the internal faculties than any other intellectual operation. The Paṇḍit represented the living memory of a scriptural tradition, yet memory without understanding was universally disvalued, guys. This is where we are different from religions who shall remain unnamed for today's live stream. You all know, guys, that this is distinctly different from those religions. Check this out. Memory without understanding was universally disvalued. I love this. Those who knew the meaning of scripture were considered superior to those who merely memorized it, and those who put its meaning into life were superior to those who merely knew its meaning. Ah, what a great line. And guys, I've told you before, right, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has some Indian influences in some strange, unintended ways, okay? First of all, Jiu-Jitsu originated in Japan. Japan has long cultural ties with India, maybe indirectly. Things have gone from India to Japan repeatedly, okay? Shintoism, Buddhism, and Jiu-Jitsu mysteriously might be the name of the king of war in Mahabharata called Jujutsu. U and J is very interchangeable forever in almost all languages, okay? Now, from Japan, Jiu-Jitsu goes to Brazil. And Brazilians who take it up, that one family called Gracie family, they also incorporate yoga to a large extent in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And because some philosophical traditions associated with any martial art always happens, right? Since that also got transferred from Japan to Brazil, guess how the system of belts happen in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, okay? It's unlike karate, kung fu, etc. or taekwondo even. Willy-nilly, any random teacher, any random guy who has started a karate class on the streets cannot give away black belts, okay? Black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can only be given by other black belts who have all black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are in some way or the other sanctioned by the Gracie family themselves. Unless you are wearing a no-gi, in which case, if you get a black belt in no-gi, it's not even considered a black belt, first of all. You have to wear the gi, that thing that looks like a kimono, okay? And they are in some way or the other, directly or indirectly, sanctioned by the Gracie family, okay? In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, the beginner level is white belt. The first day you start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you are a white belt basically. Then you become a blue belt, next level. Then purple belt, then brown belt, then black belt. Now, in India, I don't know, I don't think there is any black belt, okay? It's such a rare and such an earned thing it has to be. Unlike karate, kung fu, every kid gets a black belt. In entirety of India, there are so many great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teachers these days. There are so many great Jiu-Jitsu fighters. We have a guy in UFC, for God's sake. Even then, we don't have a single Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in India today, okay? After black belt, there is something called a coral belt, okay? It's a red color belt. The coral belt has been up till today given to, I think, about 11 to 12 people. That coral belt is for people who apply the principles of Jiu-Jitsu in their personal life. So you see how similar that is from this thing we are reading in this paper. Let me check some comments and I'll drink a bit of coffee. Japanese scholar who studied in Vishwabharati to know the Yagya method and introduced Yagya in Japan or gave real tip to Yagya. There is a Bengali woman who talks about anti-men laws. Her name is Nandini Bhattacharya. I see. Okay. So, those who knew the meaning of scripture were considered superior to those who merely memorized it, and those who put its meaning into life were superior to those who merely knew its meaning. This is coral belt of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Indian history nonetheless testifies that many Pandits memorized the Veda without understanding and generally stressed memory more than understanding. Lol. Even in India today, Brahmins frequently say that the meaning of the Veda is hidden and cannot be known. This view is also shared by an equal number from the Pandit community. Now, who knows what his basis for saying this is? His database has to be questioned here. And also, this paper is from 1982. Classical Indian education was geared toward the transformation of the human person. The goal of scriptural education was a thorough spiritual transformation. Vedic wisdom is eternal, Sanatan, but because human history is always in process, wisdom needs reassertion. The reassertion of scriptural wisdom takes place in memory. The educational goal of spiritual transformation is attainable to the degree that Vedic wisdom is reasserted in the memory of a community or an individual. In short, knowledge lives in memory. This was the principle behind the exclusion of written texts in the Vedic tradition. If knowledge is to be heard, it must live in memory. Yet memory is not necessarily raised above the other operations in education. Although hearing, reflection, manan, and even concentration, what's this word? I can't read. Nididhyasana, employ memory, the Upanishads do not elevate memory above other sources of understanding. For example, while the Vedanta defines meditation as constant remembrance, it views rational discrimination as a far superior operation. Nyaya, one of the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu thought, makes a perceptive distinction between recollection and recognition. Education in scripture is not mere recollection but entails recognition as well. Recollection is an operation of memory for the Nyaya system, including neither perception nor cognition, understanding. Recognition, on the other hand, recollection is an operation of memory for the Nyaya system, including neither perception nor cognition. Recognition, on the other hand, originates from past impressions, that is the operation of memory, in close association with a direct perception. Recognition is oral transmission brought forth by an impression orally communicated and through which perception takes place. Thus, new perception and original knowledge result from oral transmission. However, the Pandit, who has merely memorized a text, still fulfills a significant role when he recites it to his public. The recognition of wisdom is only initiated by the Pandit. The student must perceive the wisdom of what is heard very much on his own. To demand any more from the Pandit is to confuse him with the Guru, who is more assertive and directive. Again, there is a counterpart in rabbinic Judaism and its 2 sources, the Mishnah and the Torah. Mishnah was transmitted through memorization and consequently called the oral Torah, while the Pentateuch, how is it pronounced? Pentateuch was called the written Torah. Mishnah was actually constructed to facilitate memorization. Saul Lieberman writes, a regular oral, I can't read that word, it's too small, guys. A regular oral ekdocet edition of the Mishnah was in existence. A fixed text recited by the Tanaim or the college. The Tana or repeater or reciter committed to memory the text or certain portions of the Mishnah, which he subsequently recited in the college in the presence of the great masters of the law. Those Tanaim were pupils chosen for their extraordinary memory, although they were not always endowed with due intelligence. When the Mishnah was committed to memory and the Tanaim recited it in the college, it was thereby published and possessed all traits and features of a written ekdotis, or something was written in that word. The Tana or reciter in rabbinic Judaism is much like the Paṇḍit in Sanskritic Hinduism. Okay. He is the memory of the people, the living memory. The living memory of the tradition. Just as in Judaism, the rabbis, the masters of the law, were the spiritual teachers, so in Hinduism, the gurus were the spiritual teachers of scripture. Okay, now the next subchapter, important, the guru tradition. Okay, let me have some coffee and check some comments. Has Brijbhushan Singh actually been found guilty by the... no wonder this performance, since they were busy being used by politicians. This was Bharat's best performance in Asian Games in terms of total medal. Yes, it was very expected. I did not watch even Bajrang Punia etc's performance this time, because I knew they were going to not do great this time, because that's not how sports works, guys, and especially rigorous sports like wrestling. Wrestling arguably is it's definite. I think it's the toughest sport. Not I. Many people can argue, and I can give points exactly why wrestling is the toughest sport in the world. It requires the toughest discipline, toughest mental, physical rigor, toughest dietary restrictions, and toughest lung endurance, etc. Everything is the toughest in wrestling. It requires gigantic amounts of strength, gigantic amounts of explosive strength. Okay, so there are different kinds of strength. Some strength is used for picking up something. Some strengths are used for holding a person. Some strengths are used for things like Olympic lifting, power lifting, or weightlifting. Those are specifically explosive strength. Wrestling requires all of these things. And if you don't do these for weeks at end and sit on the roads to protest, your next event is pretty much fucked. Yes, I hope we start doing better in Olympics too. Bajrang Punia was steamrolled by Uzbeki and Mongolian wrestler. He was nowhere near his best. Even other Japanese wrestlers defeated India. Yeah. Japanese wrestlers are defeating India. What the fuck? I would have understood if it was at least from someone from Dagestan or those Eurasian Muslim regions. Places from where Khabib comes. Okay, what is linguist saying? Okay, let's continue. The Guru tradition. The scriptural tradition possessed three sorts of teachers in ancient India: Guru, Acharya, and Upadhyaya. The Guru is the one who, having performed all rites, gives instruction in the Veda. Jan Gonda or Jan Gonda states that the cumulative function of the Guru consisted in imparting to the young member of the Aryan community the sacraments, teaching him a portion of the Veda, and educating him with particular regard to achara, traditionally right behavior, and dharma, socio-religious duties. The role combined teaching, advising, initiating, and magical and officiating functions. The Acharya, another comprehensive term, also initiated a student through the Upanayana rite, twice born, Dvija, and gave instruction in one portion or possibly all of the Veda. The Upadhyaya taught only part of the Veda and, unlike other teachers, took a fee for his instruction. Because of this, he was considered a lesser type of teacher, even though he was frequently called the first teacher, Adi Guru, along with a youth's father and mother. Regardless of the term used, the teacher was primarily an educational leader at the inception of India's classical history. Okay, what a great line. The teacher was primarily an educational leader at the inception of India's classical history, But among the seers of the Upanishads, the final portion of the Veda, the teacher became both an intellectual and a spiritual figure. From this moment onward, the Guru was distinguished from other teachers, especially the Paṇḍit, as the prime religious teacher. So, this is where the Guru became the prime religious teacher. The Upanishadic literature and the later Vedanta defined the teacher as both an intellectual and a spiritual figure, while the parallel revered literature, Smriti, emphasized the spiritual dimension of the teacher almost exclusively. The double aspect of the teaching role is expressed in the Upanishadic definition of the teacher. The Mundaka Upanishad defines the teacher as one who is versed in scripture and absorbed in Brahman. Versed in scripture, absorbed in Brahman. Okay? He who heard the meaning and import of the Veda fulfilled the intellectual aspect of teacher, while he who realized Brahman fulfilled the spiritual aspect. A teacher, according to the Upanishads, is a spiritually liberated person whose realization has come through the wisdom of the scriptural tradition. Although early Indian literature reveals a brilliant lineage of individual teachers, little is known of their personal histories. The esteem given to the Guru in Hinduism reflects this initial conception of the teacher as a learned and realized individual. Moreover, the role of the spiritual teacher became absolutized by the end of the scriptural period. Since everyone admitted the difficulty of attaining Brahman in self-realization, the teacher became a necessity. The Chandogya Upanishad speaks of the teacher as one who can remove the bandages from the eyes and give direction. Where symbols of the absolute in the early Upanishads are ritualistic, the later Upanishads speak of the absolute more in negative terms, following the suggestive and somewhat inadequate formulations of the sages. The scriptural tradition includes that liberation is virtually impossible without the knowledge and favor of the Guru. The Guru is thus differentiated from the Paṇḍit, although both share in transmitting an oral scriptural tradition. Knowledge transmitted through a succession of teachers, Guru Parampara, by passing on Sampradaya or ancient wisdom, through a Sampradaya, ancient wisdom is the common heritage of both Guru and Paṇḍit. Yet a substantial distinction remains. The quality of the knowledge received differs because one teacher is basically a spiritual guide and the other is a transmitter of an intellectual heritage. The former is admittedly rare. Although the study, preservation and transmission of scripture is unaltered form, the preservation and transmission of scripture in unaltered form was the work of the Brahman class, it is non-Vedic to expect spiritual teachers to arise from a social class in which membership is determined by birth. The Guru does not come by his ability to enlighten others by virtue of his birth or social class. Instead, authority comes from the chain of masters through whom a particular Guru hears and speaks the wisdom of the ages. The chain of disciplic succession is the source out of which the Guru transmits tradition. It is believed that the insight and power of all the previous teachers is present in the teaching of a living Guru. By contrast, the duty of Paṇḍit families to transmit the heritage is established by their birth into a definite social class. Interesting distinction. Insight and power of all the previous teachers is present in the teaching of a living Guru. But by contrast, the duty of Paṇḍit families to transmit the heritage is established by their birth into a definite social class. To preserve in memory and to transmit the and repeatedly this professor is, I think he's being very fair at this, that he's not using the word caste, he's using the word social class, which is way more accurate. To preserve in memory and to transmit the knowledge which leads to self-realization is the meaning of lineage. Throughout all the scriptural commentaries written by Hindu sage philosophers, the beginning and end of each treatise offer salutations and praise to the teachers of a particular lineage. Shankara, the medieval Vedantin, writes, "I bow down to my teacher, a knower of Brahman, who has collected for us the nectar of knowledge from the Vedantas like a bee collecting the best honey from flowers. Aha. Repeating the names of the line of teachers serves as a sort of mantra which heightens consciousness and becomes, it is believed, a source of power. And I agree it does because of the visualization aspect. Some commentators use lineage to enhance doctrine itself. Lineage refines, strengthens, and clarifies understanding. Lineage increases the value of doctrine as it passes through the memory of the ages. Initiation into knowledge is a familiar point of departure in Indian religion, and in the Guru tradition, initiation becomes a lifelong process of bringing to mind the line of past teachers. The transmission of spiritual knowledge, which is the function of the Guru, is accomplished only with the help of traditional authority, and such authority is harnessed in the present teaching situation by sustaining in consciousness the lineage of teachers. The memory of the past is gathered, as it were, through a mantra of teachers, and the impact of accumulated wisdom is brought to bear in the instruction given by the living teacher. Scriptural wisdom is thus based upon the external authority of a line of teachers, but it is established on the internal authority of the teacher who has personalized that wisdom. The identity which exists between a teacher and his lineage is usually an identity in wisdom and personality. Previous teachers are present in the consciousness of the living teacher. One of the more significant contributions of Shankara is the identification he makes between Guru and Scripture. Whenever he refers to Scripture as a source of knowledge, he invariably includes the teacher. Okay? Whenever Shankaracharya refers to Scripture as a source of knowledge, he invariably includes the teacher as a source of knowledge. In his commentaries on the Upanishads, he consistently employs the couplet of teacher and Scripture. For example, quote, "Those who follow both Scripture and teacher transcend ignorance," end quote. Scripture and teacher function as a unitive cause in Shankara's articulation. They operate as a unit, okay? Because the latter, that is the teacher, embodies the former, that is the Scripture. The teacher embodies the Scripture, and the former is a verbalization of the latter. Aha. So the Scripture is a verbalization of the teacher. What a beautifully written paper, guys. This is so fair. He might get one or two things wrong, maybe. After all, he's a white man from a foreign country. But we are clear about his intentions. He's writing this paper from a place of respect and reverence for this culture. They operate as a unit because the latter embodies the former, and the former is a verbalization of the latter. The Guru dwells in Brahman because he is versed in Scripture, and he is knowledgeable in Scripture because he dwells in Brahman. Yeah. The Guru embodies the highest truths of the sages because he is one with Brahman. As embodiment of Scripture, he is both the exemplar and the authentic transmitter of tradition. Let me have a sip of coffee and check some comments. Dharma Adhyatma is saying Vajra Shuchika Upanishad Bhashya lecture next day. Is there any book or paper on it? Then we can find it. By the way, the interpolation word now makes me angry, as I found that the English-British versions like H.H. Wilson, Max Muller have changed the years of particular clans and king. Yeah. Like you see Aryabhattyam in manuscripts saying 360 years from the Kali Yuga Aryabhatta was born, and published version nowadays says 3600 years from Kali Yuga. I think we need foreign swimming coaches. Adhyatma would be nice. Param Astika trads do not like the word Kshepan or Prakshipta. That is their foolishness. The concern to not do that by themselves, because in that way all the Shastras will become Prakshipta. So initially all Christian countries had caste system, and only some sort of eradication happened after French Revolution. Yeah, of course. Judaism has priestly caste, and that is based on birth, yes. Old Testament has caste system too, and one untouchability is present there. A common tribe cannot touch priest and cannot eat with priest. Yeah, that is a distinction. That is what people don't get. And when we are saying that, see, caste came from casta, etc., we are not saying that the British came and invented caste system one fine morning in the 1700s or 1800s. We are saying that, arey bhai, there was a sinister intention behind calling it caste and not a social class, which is that This is a distinctive problem that Indian or Hindu society has. No one else has. No other religion, no other country has it or ever has had it. That is the problem with calling it caste and not social class or other things. Okay, some Indian, as embodiment of scripture, some Indian teachers believe the guru to be superior to scripture. For meaning does not, because meaning does not necessarily subsist in the word, but in the embodiment of the teacher. The oral scripture must be embodied to be transmitted at all. And even the written text is not embodied in a way that gives meaning. The text lives within the particular embodiment of the teacher, where meaning is also present. A guru, as understood here, is a catalyst for religious understanding. He contains within himself tradition with all its complexity and growth. Growth in tradition. Hinduism saw that stressing oral tradition afforded greater possibility of achieving the meaning of past wisdom in present day life. Oral tradition is capable of embodiment in ways which are not open to written tradition. The reason for this is the living teacher, the link between the past and its present actualization. Because of his personal assimilation of the meaning of scripture, the teacher is a more effective communicator than the written record. Very well said. The contrast with Rabbinic Judaism is still relevant at this point. Mnemonic literature, of which oral law is the best example, did not stay the same throughout Israel's history but rather developed. Judaism perceived that law must be adjusted to the human person, as the history of Jewish law attests. Oral tradition, nevertheless, maintained a spiritual continuity in the reciters and rabbis of the law. Mishnah alone was committed to memory and transmitted through living books, Tanaim, to future generations. Jacob Neusner, analyzing the form and meaning of Mishnah, writes, he writes that the way to shape and educate minds is to impart into the ear, thence into the mind, perpetual awareness that what happens recurs, and what recurs is pattern and order, and through them wholeness. How better than to fill the mind with formalized sentences, generative of meaning for themselves and of significance beyond themselves, in which meaning rests upon the perception of relationship. Okay, meaning rests upon the perception of relationship. For the memorization and repetition of Mishnah from the time the creation of Mishnah are perceived as holy, an intrinsically sacred action, not merely an informative and functionally useful one, but a holy one. The roles of reciter and rabbi of Mishnah are not exactly the same as those of Pandit and Guru in India, but the similarity does point to an element of oral tradition which is not present in written tradition, which is the sacred act of transmission itself. The transmission is itself a sacred act. You are not transmitting a sacred text. The fact that you are transmitting is a sacred act in itself. Now, a subchapter called Understanding and Oral Tradition. Understanding and Oral Tradition. Interesting. The writing of this paper is sublime. Yeah, guys. Specifically, writing style itself is very beautiful. A great teacher can make a boring subject very interesting, of course. I can say this about many teachers. Yeah. Ek minute. Okay. Transmission of tradition renews and transforms human existence. Transmission of tradition renews and transforms human existence. What a beautiful thing to say. I'll repeat this sentence once more. Transmission of tradition renews and transforms human existence. It not only hands over a legacy, but also gives access to new modes of being. This seems like a Roger Scruton book. As tradition emerges from a particular social and cultural milieu, it gives expression to the major perceptions of a people, meaning a population, a general society. Tradition delivers the culture's principal ways of looking at the basic problems of human existence, along with possible responses to those problems. It passes from generation to generation, especially the symbolic and institutional ways of dealing with the human condition. How well has this guy understood this concept? Tradition, in its oral and written expressions, is the bearer of social memory. It is more or civilizational memory, societal memory, everything. It is more important to remember than to be merely informed of tradition, as was seen above. Okay? Information about tradition neither renews nor transforms human existence, whereas transmission as an act of social memory does both. Transmission as an act of social memory does both. Both meaning renews and transforms human existence. This is a fascinating paper. Social memory renews and transforms human existence as it becomes embodied. Social memory cannot affect human existence without becoming embodied in particular human beings. This is the thesis of this paper. Memory requires a form of embodiment. Both written and oral transmission offer the possibility, yet the written word which calls forth embodiment frequently misses the mark. The Paṇḍit tradition guarantees an intellectual embodiment as it transmits the oral word, but only an authentic Guru tradition guarantees both an intellectual and spiritual embodiment of social memory. It is also suggested that the Tana and the Rabbi in Jewish history can be differentiated along these lines. It is within the structures of memory that an understanding of transmission is discovered. Repetition, it seems, explicitly transmits a heritage. Repetition, moreover, leads to an intimacy with tradition which may even achieve communion with it. For example, the recounting of a mythic narrative and the performance of ritual entail a repetitive structure which bears meaning in itself. Repetition is far more than historical recollection passing through the social memory of the ages. Recollection renders the past present. What a fascinating sentence. Recollection renders the past as present. It brings the past of life and gives it transformative possibilities. See, what is being argued here is that if you conserve your tradition and civilizational social memories, institutions, etc., then in fact you will be able to transform and go forward from here. But if you forget those things, what we have seen, what happens in the hands of commies and liberals, atheists, etc., is that they keep reinventing the wheel. Okay, if we had our tradition in place and moved on from there, we could actually make progress. Because see, okay, we have achieved up till this, we have created these things, we have created these philosophies, now let's move forward and let's think of new stuff. But what commies are doing is now creating a religion from scratch. Marxism is a religion in itself. Atheism is almost a religion. Marxism is definitely an Abrahamic faith. So they are now coming up with their establishment of the first years of creating a faith system or a religion. They have their deities, they have their heresies. After they have come up with a gigantic body of work in which Marxism is considered a religion, even obviously in mainstream, after that they will maybe again start progressing from it. But for now they are just reinventing the wheel. They are creating a society and culture unto themselves, and which also speaks of global brotherhood of sorts, like the Islamic concept of Ummah. Tradition lives as present while history is just a memory of the past. The distinction in Nyaya logic between recollection and recognition discussed above is pertinent. Recognition is not merely to live upon past impressions, but to achieve new perceptions by means of social memory. So that we have a sort of a launch pad, we have a base to start from. If you reject that base, saying that it was not perfect, it was bad, it had evil side effects, or it was completely evil, then you have to rebuild that platform, that launch pad in itself. Again, reinvent it. But the idea of decoloniality is that why not accept that this is your platform, observe what is good about it, what is bad about it, and move on from there. Instead of completely saying that we don't have a platform, or our platform was completely evil without knowing anything about that platform or that launch pad. That's all. The distinction in Nyaya logic between recollection and recognition discussed above is pertinent. Recognition is not merely to live upon past impressions, but to achieve new perceptions by means of social memory. Recognition personalizes tradition. Okay? Recognition personalizes tradition. Okay? Tradition becomes your own and achieves intimacy with it. Thus, human existence is renewed through recognition. This is the climactic moment of transmission. What a beautiful paper this is. Okay, I'll have to upload this section separately as a video as well. I'll put the man's face on the thumbnail, etc. What a great man. William, I can't pronounce his surname. Chenkener or something. Social memory is born either by written word or by oral word. Aha. Continuity of memory and recollection is established by that bearer of tradition. Through continuity, the tradition becomes personalized. Continuity rests on lineage, but the problem of lineage is whether it speaks to a new age with authority. The authority of lineage permeates the oral word more than the written word because the continuity of social memory operates more clearly in the former than in the latter. Okay, the authority of lineage permeates the oral word more than the written word because the continuity of social memory operates more clearly in oral word than in written word. Okay. Understanding, of course, comes through language. A linguistic tradition delivers meaning to human life. Why should Sanskrit be national language, official language? This is why. Your ways of thinking, epistemology, everything changes because of your language. Understanding, of course, comes through language. A linguistic tradition delivers meaning to human life. But whether a written tradition fully achieves this goal is problematic. An oral tradition has far greater capacity to deliver meaning. H.G. Gadamer believes that understanding is not so much a method as a standing within a happening of tradition. Understanding is not so much a method as it is a standing within a happening of tradition. Okay? Understanding is a standing within a happening of tradition. Transmission of that tradition is the happening of which Gadamer speaks. Understanding is not primarily an act of subjectivity, but an entering into an occurrence of transmission in which past and present are being mediated. Such an occurrence requires an embodied word and not an empty word. Meaning is thus elicited from the historical process of transmission. G.R. Geiselman reiterates the same fact when he says that the distinction between transmission and handing on tradition is the same as the difference between the closed word and the open word. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. What a great quote. The limits of my language are the limits of my world. Okay? And interesting, Sanskrit does not have a set numbers of words. You can add two words and make up your own word. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world, observed Wittgenstein. But transmission pushes back the limits of language and extends its horizon. A written or oral tradition disembodied is caught within the limits of language. A written or oral tradition disembodied is caught within the limits of language. Even the Hindu Pandit does not escape this danger. But an embodied tradition, of which the Guru is an example, bears within it the power to extend the limited range of language, if not to mediate beyond it. The written word can only supplement and spoken word in the written word can only supplement the spoken word in tradition. Spoken words live. They are infallibly heard when they are communicated through the truth of the personality. Oh, the paper is over, guys. Interesting. What a great paper. So we'll check some comments and then start Brahma Purana live stream. This was a fascinating paper. There is difference between learning and embodying. Yes, the author understands this perfectly. Yes, this is how Hindus kept their culture alive. Yes, he talks that those have no devotion for Sri Krishna and Radha Upadhikar. Oh my God. Neo-Buddhists worship Ambedkar and not Buddha. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now we start Brahma Puran, and we'll do a bit of a recap of last day's stream of Brahma Puran, where we read and heard shocking things said by Lord Shiva to Uma. So last day's last subchapter was called transition between varnas. Okay, you all ready, guys? Yeah. So, by cleansing himself, even a Shudra can become a Brahmana. In that way, if a Brahmana deviates from cleaning himself and from clean food, he loses his state of being a Brahmana and becomes a Shudra. Okay? We are quoting Lord Shiva here. Oh goddess, this is Lord Shiva speaking to Uma, Devi Uma. If a Shudra is pure in soul and conquers his senses, and if he is pure in his deeds, he becomes a Brahmana. Brahma has himself said this. Now, Lord Shiva is citing Brahma. Brahma has himself said this. If a Shudra is engaged in his own tasks and purifies himself, he becomes a Brahmana. Know that this is my view. Birth, sacraments, learning, and offspring. Listen to these 4 words. Birth, sacraments, learning, and offspring cannot be the reason for someone being a Brahmana. And this is not a commie Arya Samaji manuscript, guys. Because up until just two pages before this, they were saying things that would make a Marxist or liberal bleed from their eyes and ears, okay? So it's not a liberal whitewashed Brahma Puran that we are reading. It's a pretty trad Brahma Puran where this is being said. Can't help it. We are quoting Lord Shiva. Birth, sacraments, learning, and offspring cannot be the reason for someone being a Brahmana. Good conduct alone is the reason. Good conduct alone is the reason. In this world, those who are Brahmanas are characterized by good conduct. If he is established by good conduct, even a Shudra becomes a Brahmana. Oh, one with the beautiful hips. It is my view that a Brahmana is one in whom the essence of the Brahman exists. If the Nirguna and sparkling Brahman exists, that person is a Brahmana. O goddess, such unblemished people indicate what should be done in different states. Brahma, the creator of subjects and the one who bestows boons, has himself said this. The Brahmana is like a giant field that is roaming around on its feet. Listen to this sentence. The Brahmana is like a giant field that is roaming around on its feet. O beautiful one, if anyone sows seed in this field, the act of agriculture yields fruits after death. If a person wants to be content, he must always think of adhering to the virtuous path. His conduct should be characterized by adhering to the Brahmana's path. A person who is a householder should study the Samhita texts at home. He must always be engaged in studying, but should never resort to teaching for earning his living. Such a Brahmana is always established in the virtuous path. He offers oblations into the fire and studies and is fit to be merged into the Brahman. O goddess, having obtained the status of being a Brahmana, one must always seek to protect it. Seek to protect that status of the Brahman. O one with the beautiful smiles, he must engage in his tasks and receive gifts from worthy donors. I have thus told you the secret about how a Shudra can become a Brahmana and about how a Brahmana can become dislodged from Dharma and become a Shudra. আমি কাল শুনবো আর লম্বা লম্বা কমেন্ট করবো. Good night. Yeah, good night, Orin. Bhavishya Puran talks about interchanging of Varna in details which go against Vedanga Smriti trad view. Bhavishya Puran is a controversial text anyway. Hinduism is the evangelical version of Hinduism. Actually, Hinduism needs to be aggressively expand without use of sheer violence. Yes, you find these verses too, and even in the birth ones. ISKCON is the evangelical form of Hinduism. Yes. Yeah. Though I respect. Actually, today I was talking to a sort of a Facebook friend whom I met through another friend. I've never met her personally. She lives in England. She's a Kriya Yoga practitioner. She's my age, I think a little younger than me. She lives in London, and she's a Kriya Yoga practitioner. And she was, we were basically talking about doing a music project together of some mantras and chants. After that, we got to talking about Tantra a little, because she sent me a reference track of a chant where in the credits that who has played the guitar, who has played the djembe, who has played the tabla. In that, for some chants, Sri Swami Satyananda Saraswati was mentioned. Now I thought this is that same Satyananda Saraswati who is the guru of the woman, female Swami who wrote the translation of the Sri Vigyan Bhairav Tantra I am reading. So I asked her, is it that same Swami Satyananda Saraswati? No. Then she said no. She sent me a picture of him. He's a white man living in England. And then she sent me some links of his speeches, sermons, so to speak. He's a devout Shakta and Tantra practitioner, okay, that white man, Swami Satyananda Saraswati. And he was talking passionately about, he knows all about Makali, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Keshav Chandra Sen. He's giving out those stories in his sermons, or basically satsangs, okay, in London. So after that, I told her that I didn't know that even other sampradayas and sects are doing these things and are persuading or even making white people think that Hinduism is interesting, or getting them interested, or even to convert. And I thought only ISKCON does this. And she said that, yeah, ISKCON is overrated and stuff. It's highly commercialized. They are basically the Hindu version of Christianity, but there are countless Shakta traditions going on in England, USA, everywhere, who are doing the same amounts of work, who are persuading same amounts of white people and convincing them that, and even creating an interest that, yes, see, Hinduism is so great. And they are accomplishing these things, but without that same amount of mainstream credit and the social media buzz that usually ISKCON gets, that, yes, see, we have convinced so many white people about the greatness of Hindu tradition. But there are interesting sects like these in England. The entire Indian history would be screwed without Bhavishya Puran. Why then does Bhavishya Puran predict the coming of Muhammad? Bhavishya Puran is Upapuran, not Mukhya Puran, so yeah, it's not to be taken seriously. There's a reason why commies as well as missionaries hate ISKCON, though I also have philosophical difference with them. Yes, but my point is that many other people who are not just Christian epistemology with a Hindu name, even there are great sects like them as well who are doing these things. So check out a white person, a white Swami called Swami Satyananda Saraswati, and check out his sect as well, okay? They are tantric practitioners. They are doing this absolutely rigorous going on propagating Shakta traditions in England. Okay, now today's subchapter, virtuous conduct. Uma asked, O illustrious one, she is asking Lord Shiva, O Lord of all beings, O one who is worshipped by the gods and the asuras, O God, O Lord, I have a doubt about dharma and adharma for men. Please tell me. An embodied being is always bound by three bonds of thoughts, words and deeds. How is he freed from this? O God, through what good conducts, deeds and good qualities do men go to heaven? Maheshwara replied, O Goddess, O one who knows the true purport of dharma, O Uma, O one who is always devoted to dharma, this question is beneficial to all beings and increases their intelligence. Listen, those who are engaged in true dharma are serene and show no external signs. Their doubts have been dispelled and they are not bound by notions of dharma or impediments to dharma. They know the truth about creation and destruction. They know everything and their vision is impartial. They are devoid of attachment. Such men are freed from the bondage of karma. In thoughts, words and deeds, they do not cause harm to anyone. They are not immersed in anything and karma does not bind them down. They are not immersed in anything and karma does not bind them down. They refrain from causing injury to life. They are good in conduct and full of compassion. Kripa. Kripanidhi. They are impartial towards those who hate them and love them. They are controlled and are freed from the bondage of karma. They are compassionate towards all creatures. They are trusted by all creatures. The conduct of such men is free from violence and they go to heaven. They are always free from any sense about what belongs to them and what belongs to others. They never associate with the wives of others. Such men enjoy wealth that has been obtained through dharma and go to heaven. They are devoted to their own wives and approach them at the time of their period. They refrain from the pleasure that comes from vulgar carnal pursuits. Such men go to heaven. They refrain from theft and are always satisfied with their own riches. They earn a living through their own fortune. Such men go to heaven. Earn a living through their own fortune. Guys, very anti-commie thing to say. Anti-welfare state. Men with good conduct cover their eyes when they look at the wives of others. They are virtuous in their conduct and they conquer their senses. Indriya Jaya. Such men go to heaven. In this way, men must always follow the path determined by the gods. Learned men must always follow a path that is untarnished. A learned man must always follow a path that does not unnecessarily harm others. This is a path marked by donations, rites, and austerities with good conduct, purity, and compassion. This path and no other must be followed by those who desire to go heaven. And donations, of course, in a capitalistic society, donation has a huge role, and donation is voluntary. It's with your consent, unlike taxes, to dole out to people who you think are undeserving and to distribute it equitably, etc. Uma said, O God, O Bhutapati, O unblemished one, tell me about speech that binds people and tell me about that speech which frees them. Maheshwara replied, men who do not resort to the adharma of uttering a lie for their own sake or for others go to heaven. Men who do utter a falsehood for the sake of subsistence, dharma, or addiction to kama, okay, those who do utter a falsehood for the sake of subsistence, dharma, or addiction to kama go to heaven. Men who do not say what is not true go to heaven. I think the previous sentence has some spelling mistake. Men who do utter a falsehood for the sake of subsistence, dharma, or addiction to kama go to heaven. I think they meant to write men who do not utter a falsehood for the sake of subsistence, dharma, or addiction to kama go to heaven, right? Next sentence says, obviously, men who do not say what is not true go to heaven. Men who go to heaven speak soft, sweet, and welcoming words, clearly articulated and devoid of sin. Virtuous men do not speak harsh, acerbic, cruel words, and those who do not slander go to heaven. Vivek Ramaswamy is going to heaven, guys. Those who do not slander their friends or speak so as to hurt others are men who go to heaven. Men who avoid harsh words that are full of malice towards others, those who are tranquil and impartial towards all creatures, go to heaven. Though men who avoid harsh words which are full of malice, okay, they go to heaven. Men who do not deceive or speak excessively. So men who do not deceive and do not speak excessively, those who are not adversarial and are always amiable in speech, go to heaven. Their words are not spoken out of rage and do not pierce the heart. Men who are peaceful and not angry go to heaven. O Goddess, through such speech, men always serve the cause of dharma. These are auspicious qualities of the truth. Learned men must always avoid lies. Uma said, O immensely fortunate one, O God of the gods, O wielder of the Pinakin, what kind of thoughts always bind down a man? Please tell me. A Pinaka is both a trident and a bow. In particular, Pinaka means Shiva's bow. Shiva is known as Pinaki. He wields both a bow and a trident. Yeah, Shulapanin and Pinakin. Please tell me. Maheshwara replied, O fortunate one, men whose thoughts are always full of dharma go to heaven. I will describe this. Listen. O one with the auspicious face, when a man's thoughts lead him astray and when his inner beings lead him astray, when his inner being leads him astray, he is bound. Listen. When he sees another person's possession kept in a desolate spot in the forest, but a man's thoughts do not turn towards seizing them, he goes to heaven. There are men who are never delighted when another person's possessions are left in a desolate spot in the village or in the house. They go to heaven. In that way, there are men whose thoughts are not overwhelmed by desire. They do not wish to seize the unprotected wives of others. Such men go to heaven. There are men whose thoughts regard friends and enemies equally. They are friends towards whom they meet. Such men go to heaven. Men who go to heaven are learned, compassionate, pure, devoted to the truth, and satisfied with their own riches. They are without any sense of enmity, and their minds are naturally prone towards friendliness. They are compassionate towards all creatures. Such men go to heaven. There are learned men who perform rites. They are forgiving and love their well-wishers. They always know about dharma and adharma. Such men go to heaven. O goddess, there are men who do not wish to accumulate the fruits of auspicious or inauspicious deeds. They go to heaven. When their fortunes are on the ascendance, there are men who are always devoted to gods and brahmanas, avoiding those who are wicked. They go to heaven. O goddess, I have described the fruits of auspicious deeds and the path followed by those who go to heaven. What else do you want to hear? Uma said, O Maheshwara, I have a great doubt about mortals. You are accomplished, therefore you should explain it to me now. O Lord, through what deeds does a man obtain a long lifespan? O Lord of the gods, through what austerities does he obtain a great lifespan? Through what deeds does a man obtain a short lifespan on earth? O God, O unblemished one, you should tell me about perverse deeds. Some have good fortune, others suffer from ill fortune. Some are born in noble lineages, others are born in inferior lineages. Some men are ugly to behold, as if they are made of wood. There are other men who are handsome to behold. Some are limited in wisdom, others become learned. Some are extremely wise, others lack in jnana and vijnana. Some speak little, others are very eloquent. O God, this is the way men appear. You should explain this to me. Maheshwara replied, O goddess, I will tell you about the fruits of karma. All men on earth reap the fruits of their own deeds. There may be a man who is an Indra among yogis. Nevertheless, he always raises his staff to destroy life. There may be a man who always raises his weapons to kill various categories of beings. He is cruel towards all creatures and always causes anxiety. He is even merciless towards worms and insects that seek refuge. O goddess, such a man always goes to hell. On the other hand, there may be one who has dharma in his soul. He is born in his own form, meaning he is reborn as a human. Those who are violent go to hell. Those who are non-violent go to heaven. In that terrible hell, a man suffers from pain and hardships. If he manages to pass through that hell in some fashion, he is born as human but has a brief lifespan. O goddess, if a person performs wicked and violent deeds that injures all beings, he is born with a brief lifespan. O goddess, there are men who perform auspicious deeds that avoid injury to life. They do not hurl their weapons or use their staffs. They do not cause violence. They do not strike or kill or approve of killing. They are affectionate towards all creatures and look upon others as their own self. O goddess, such men always deserve divinity. They are happy and always enjoy bliss and objects of pleasure. They are good in conduct and follow the path of good karma. When they are born in the world of humans, they have a long lifespan. This is because they are free of causing violence to life. This is what Brahma has said. End quote. Now the next subchapter is called Attaining Heaven. Let me check some comments. Hinduism, heaven is temporary state. Same with hell. Yeah. What is heaven and hell in Upanishads? Sometimes it means lokas, while sometimes not. Yeah. Both happens in Jiva, Adhidaivika state. Philosophically, both Punarjanma and Swarga Narak have importance. As per radical Advaita, there was no Janma, so no birth, no death, no hell, no heaven. So basically, we keep on shuffling between different lokas. Interesting. We also believe in lokas, but only as temporary and not final moksha. Yeah. Niralamba Upanishad and Ajatavad of Bhagavapada Gaudapa Acharya. Okay. Attaining heaven. Uma asked, through what kind of conduct does a man attain heaven? What should be his behavior and karma? What is the nature of his donations? Maheshwara replied, O goddess, the following kind of man goes to the world of the gods. He is generous and shows honor to Brahmanas. The immensely intelligent one donates food, cooked food, and drinks to those who are miserable, afflicted, and distressed. He constructs places to rest like assembly halls, wells, and lakes. He is pure and controls himself, performing nitya and other rites. He is a man who, with an extremely serene mind, and always donates seats, couches, vehicles, homes, jewels, riches, different kinds of grains, excellent fields, and women. O goddess, such a man is born in the world of the gods. There he enjoys excellent objects of pleasure for an extremely long period of time. Along with the Apsaras, he amuses himself in Nandana and other places. O wife of Mahesha, O goddess, when he is dislodged from heaven, he is born in an extremely fortunate lineage and is worshipped by men. He enjoys wealth and grain. With all the qualities that characterize desire, he is happy. With all the qualities that characterize desire, he is happy. He enjoys a lot and performs great deeds. The man is wealthy. O goddess, among beings, such men are extremely fortunate. They are generous. Earlier, Brahma has said that everyone finds them handsome to behold. O goddess, on the other hand, there are Brahmanas who are miserly and do not give to others. They are limited in intelligence and do not give food, even when they possess it. They do not give food even when they possess it. Their tongues are full of greed. Therefore, those who seek the distressed, the blind, the miserable, mendicants, and guests return dissatisfied. They never give wealth, garments, and objects of pleasure, gold, cattle, or cooked food. They should not be greedy, but are greedy. There are non-believers who do not give. O goddess, since their intelligence is perverse, such men go to hell. After the passage of time, they are born as humans. However, because they are limited in intelligence, they are born in a family that does not possess a great deal of wealth. They suffer from hunger and thirst, and people treat them as outcasts. Their hopes to obtain objects of pleasure are not met, and they spend their lives in adharma. These men are born in families with limited fortune and are addicted to trifling objects of pleasure. O goddess, through this kind of karma, men are born as those who are limited in wealth. There are others who are always insolent, proud in their behavior towards others. They are limited in intelligence and do not offer a seat or stool to those who deserve one. Since they suffer in intelligence, they do not yield passage to those who deserve to be given right of way. They do not offer arghya and food to those who should be worshipped and honored according to the rites. Arghya is a gift given to a guest to show respect. Suffering in intelligence, they do not, meaning having low intelligence, they do not offer padya and achmanya, respectively water to wash the feet and rinse the mouth. They do not greet their revered gurus with loving and welcoming words. Because their arrogance increases, they are full of avarice. They disrespect those who are elders and who should be honored. O goddess, all men who are of this type go to hell. After several years, when such men pass through hell, they take birth in condemned lineages like Shvapakas and Pulkasas. Shvapakas are sometimes equated with Chandalas. Shva means dog and Paka means to cook. Thus, Shvapaka means someone who cooks dogs or eats dogs or cooks the dogs, meaning lives with dogs, cooks for dogs. A Pulkasa, equivalently a Pukkasa, is the son of a Nishada father and a Shudra mother. These condemned lineages lack in intelligence. Having been born in such lineages, they do not show respect to seniors and elders. O goddess, but there are men who go to heaven, those who are not insolent and proud, those who worship gods and guests, those who are worshipped and revered by the worlds, those who speak sweet words, those who are pleasant in all their deeds, those who are engaged in what is agreeable with all creatures, those who are pleasant of face and do not hate, those who always speak soft and gentle words, those who welcome everyone, those who do not cause injury to creatures, those who perform all the rites properly, those who do not sit down without performing worship, those who always grant the right of way to those to whom the path should be yielded, those who always worship their gurus, and those who welcome revered guests and others who arrive. When they are born as humans, this is in special lineages. Having been born, they enjoy extensive objects of pleasure and possess all the jewels. They worship those who should be worshipped and follow dharma. They are revered by all creatures and worshipped by all the worlds. A man always reaps the fruits of the deeds he has himself performed. I have described the Dharma Vidhatri. Has himself spoken about, meaning Brahma. O beautiful one, there are those whose conduct and behavior is such that they go to hell, those whose conduct is terrible, those who cause fear to all creatures, those who use hands, feet, ropes, rods, and stones to stupefy and oppress beings, those who are limited in wisdom and violently cause agitation, and those who attack creatures and always cause anxiety amongst people. After the due progress of time, they become humans. They are born among worst families in lineages that suffer from many impediments. Through his own deeds, such a man reaps the fruits of an inferior lineage that is hated by people. O goddess, among men and relatives and kin, this should be known. There are always men who look towards all beings with compassion. Their vision is friendly and they behave like fathers towards them. They conquer their senses and are without any sense of enmity. They do not agitate or kill beings and are full of compassion. They control their hands and feet and earn trust among all creatures. They do not use ropes, rods, stones, and weapons to agitate creatures. Such a man always performs auspicious deeds. With such conduct and behavior, he is born in heaven. Such a man easily enjoys happiness and is always without anxiety. O goddess, this is the path of the virtuous, and there are no impediments along it. Uma said, one can see men who are full of great enthusiasm and skill. They possess jnana and vijnana. They are wise and know about artha. O God, there are others who suffer in wisdom and are devoid of jnana and vijnana. Through what kind of karma does a man become wise? O Virupaksha. Virupaksha meaning with malformed eyes is Shiva's name. O Virupaksha, why does a man suffer in wisdom? O supreme among those who uphold every kind of dharma, please dispel my doubt about this. O God, some are born blind, others suffer from ailments, some men are seen to be eunuchs. Please tell me the reason for this. Maheshwara replied, Brahmanas who are learned in the Vedas, those who know about success in dharma, those who always ask about what is good and what is bad, and those who avoid inauspicious deeds and practice auspicious ones, such people always obtain happiness in this world and go to heaven. When they are born as humans, they are intelligent. They are born as those who are fortunate. They are learned and devoted to sacrifices. They do not look at the wives of others with wicked eyes. If a person's nature is evil like that, he is born blind. If a man looks at a naked woman with a vile mind, because of his wicked deed, he is born as the one who suffers from ailments. If a man is so foolish that he performs the wicked act of having intercourse with someone he shouldn't, he is limited in his wisdom and is born as a eunuch. Men who tie up animals, violate their preceptor's bed, and indulge in indiscriminate intercourse are born as eunuchs. Uma asked, O supreme among gods, what kind of a deed is honored and what is condemned? How does a man obtain what is beneficial? Maheshwara replied, if a man constantly searches for the beneficial path and asks Brahmanas, if he searches for dharma and the qualities, he obtains heaven. O goddess, if he is born as a human, he becomes a person who controls himself. If he is born as a human, he becomes a person who controls himself. He is born intelligent and wise with a strong memory. O goddess, this is the dharma of the virtuous, which brings prosperity. It is the path one should traverse along. For the welfare of men, I have always spoken about it. Uma said, there are men who are limited in intelligence. They revile dharma. They do not wish to approach Brahmanas who are learned in the Vedas. Some men observe vows. They are devoted and exercise self control. There are others who are without vows. They deviate from rituals. There are others who are like Rakshasas. But there are those who perform sacrifices. There are others who are free of delusion. What is the karma that leads to this? Please tell me. This is dialectics, guys. Maheshwara replied, for this world, the Agama texts are other texts other than the Vedas, such as the Tantra texts. For this world, the Agama texts have already laid down the parameters of dharma. Having followed the authority laid down in these, there are men who are seen to be firm in their vows. However, there are those who are confounded by confusion. They speak of what is adharma as dharma. Wow. I have to underline this. Some people, because of their confusion, they speak of what is adharma as dharma. अधर्मा वाले चीज़ों को ही धर्मा बोलते फिर रहा है. They are without vows and destroy the ordinances. They are said to be Brahma Rakshasas. A Brahmana who becomes a Rakshasa. I guess that's a Brahmodaitya or Bemmodotti in Bengali. Brahma Rakshasa. After the passage of time, because they make efforts, they become humans. But they become the worst among men, who do not offer oblations or exclaim Vashatkara, an exclamation made at the time of offering oblations. O goddess, for the sake of dispelling all your doubts, I have thus described the ocean of dharma to you and what is good and bad for men. This is where we end our live stream today. Next subchapter will be called Maheshwara tells the sages about Vishnu. This is going to be fun. Considering I'm from a Vaishnavite lineage, before communism in our family stopped that tradition. Let me just check some comments and then we'll go offline. Heated debate is Brahma Raksha. And this is Brahma Rakshasa. Okay, let's see what comments are going on. अगर जन्म ही नहीं हुआ तो पुनर्जन्म कैसे? Sriharsan Namudri is saying, wow, I really love the depth at which this paper deals in explaining Indic terms which we keep using. I would love to read this. Yes, I have given the link in the description box. Okay. Read last chapter of Dhammapada. Leftists will die in shock about what is written in Tipitak about Brahmanas. They will die in shock how good Brahmanas were. Buddhist texts even wrote bullshit about Krishna, but don't know what is written in Dhammapada, but that text copied many Manusmriti verses. I see. Adhyatma in that Jatak, Dharma Adhyatma in that Jatak in Pali, it's written Kanava and not Krishna. Checked it, and Kanava even in Sanskrit is a bad word as per Nighantu. Okay. Dhammapada, in Dharmapada it's written those who disrespect Brahmins are sinful people. About Varna, based on birth, Janma, Karma, Sanskara, Acharan, Trads follow this. Karma based on action, Purana talks about this. Arya Samaji follows this. Heated debate is Brahmaraksha. Okay. Let me turn it to live chat and not a top chat. Otherwise, I get the wrong order of chats. Okay. Brahma Jnana, Vajrashuchika Upanishad. Neither birth nor karma nor body color, only quest towards Brahman based on his Brahman. Based on this, only quest towards Brahman. What a beautiful concept. Based on this, Brahmin, Arcame, Chinmaya mission, Bharat Srivastram follows this. This is a beautiful one. The quest, the ever going pursuit that let's try this. I'm preparing further and further going towards that. And 4 Varna as per Janma Nakshatra, no bodies follow it. Wow, great. Linguist me and Dharma Adhyatma, guys. We do you all have a sufficient recording setup? I would love to do a podcast with both of you all, okay, at the same time. And do you have a problem in showing your face and stuff? Audio podcast would not be that much fun to watch, although there are some who do it, all the ex-Muslims and that guy who debunks all Navbodh people. Who is that? That famous debater who speaks in Hindi. So they have found popularity even with just audio podcasts, but we need to bring you two guys and have a discussion. Because you all are obviously online at this middle of the night. I usually don't do interviews and podcasts with anyone because I can come only live at 12, not before that. So if you guys are online at this moment, it will be great. And it's not that no one remains online, guys. Even yesterday we saw that because we were discussing Jai Sai Deepak, 42 people were watching. That's pretty high for 12 in the night, and a lot of NRIs also watch it. So we can do a podcast with both of you. But let me know if you all have a sufficient internet connection, a good enough mic, and if possible, can you all show your faces? Because we don't want to do the Advaita Kala kind of a thing, okay, where we keep saying hello linguist, can you hear me, hello linguist, and your voice breaks continuously. That's what I don't want. Brahma Jnana Vajra Shuchika Upanishad, neither birth nor karma nor body color. Okay, yeah, we discussed this. Varna as per Janma Nakshatra, no bodies follow it. Read my comment regarding Bhavishya Purana. Okay. How long back is it? I remember reading it long ago. I know that Jiva moves in different lokas, but I am talking about that from Ultimate State. That the same one with Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya one, right? Okay. Where is your comment about Bhavishya Puran? That must be about half an hour back, right? But his speech on Betal, Panchavashika. Oh yeah, Bhavishya Puran. Let's see. For this one's sake, your Bhavishya Puran interpolation, I suggest using Chaukhamba Bhavishya Puran, or request ASI to publish critical edition as they did for Brahma Vaivarth Puran. Those verses were added later about Jesus Muhammad. Yeah, obviously. We should not denounce the entire text as Bhavishya Malika is derivative of that. Betal Panchavimsati. Oh yeah, Betal Panchavimsati is derivative of that. I see. Because Bhavishya Puran is record of history, like they are recording event, and that Muhammad is not there as it's Muhammad, and that too in some region and too in this region, and Ishtapura can be anyone. No. That coincidence is too obvious. And my question is, why, if they were recording what is happening, why is it called Bhavishya? Bhavishya means future, or does it mean something else in ancient Sanskrit? My bad, I messed it up. It is a Mukhya Purana, but still some of its predictions seem very exaggerated and awkward at times. Yeah. But I am uncomfortable in camera. I never come to any podcast, so cannot say about myself. Okay, so you can do without turning your camera on, right? And linguistic, what about you? Actually, for me, face reveal cause problem, but we can do audio. So both of you can do audio, right? Okay. We'll need to talk about this in chat as well to clarify this. Okay, guys, going offline now. Tomorrow morning, my 12-year-old dog will have her surgery. Pray for her. Her name is Mithi. Thanks for joining the live stream. Good night, guys. This was a great discussion. We read a fascinating paper today. Good night, guys. Thanks for joining.